Hello, everyone. Welcome. Just give everyone a moment to join us. Welcome, thanks for joining. All right, I'll get started just to make sure we have plenty of time for our conversation today. Looking most forward to it as folks filter in. Welcome. And just really pleased to have you all here for this first session of PRIME's Accreditation and Ranking Impact webinar series. My name is Sophie Konski, and I'm the Manager of Programs and Engagement at PRIME for the Principles for Responsible Management Education. We're an initiative of the UN Global Compact. Hopefully many of you here know us, and that's how you found us. But this series responds to a growing shift across business and management education, a renewed focus on societal impact, sustainability, and responsible leadership as key components of accreditation and ranking standards. We also, of course, can't ignore latest developments that have impacted this shift and are happy to have a dialogue on this throughout this series and other topics discussed at the end of the session today, where we will save ample time for questions and comments, but again, feel free to use the chat and the Q&A function as we go. Thank you for being with us today, and we welcome your contributions. For this first episode in our series, we are joined by longtime collaborators and peers in the management education space, the Association of MBAs, or AMBA, to unpack the evolving landscape and practical strategies for moving forward. As global challenges reshape the priorities of business schools and their stakeholders, accreditation bodies like AMBA are highlighting the importance of values-driven leadership, ethics, and the integration of sustainability in MBA programs. This session explores how institutions can align their practices with AMBA sustainability and educational excellence criteria while drawing on tools and frameworks offered through PRIME to do so, particularly tools like the Sharing Information on Progress or the SIP report. Our expert panel today includes voices from AMBA, the PRIME Secretariat, and a member of the PRIME community who bring firsthand experience in accreditation and impact reporting. Together, we will delve into opportunities for using PRIME engagement to support accreditation efforts and enhance program relevance, as well as showcase excellence in responsible management education. So I look forward to a rich and practical conversation, and I thank you once again for being part of this global dialogue. So today we're honored to have with us Omid Aschari, our senior advisor here at PRIME, George Iliev, director at AMBA, and Michele Dwyer, professor at University of Limerick. I'd like to invite the panelists to give a more proper introduction of themselves as well. So George, you're first on my screen here.
Thank you, Sophie. I'm George Iliev. I'm director of accreditation at AMBA, the Association of MBAs, based in London. And I'm also director of strategic projects and innovation at AMBA. Before AMBA, I used to teach China business at Sophia University. And in the sustainability dimension, between my 2 years, so I did a 2-year MBA in the US about 17, 18 years ago at Emory in Atlanta. And in between my 2 years, my summer internship was in Bolivia. It was a project funded by the Gates Foundation for bringing filtered water and fiberglass toilets to impoverished areas of the country. I learned a lot.
Thank you, George. Omid, over to you.
Thank you, Sophie. Hello, everybody. Good to be here with everyone. My name is Omid Aschari. I'm the senior advisor of PRIME and a affiliate professor of strategic management at the University of St. Gallen and chairman of the ASG strategy group with a focus on leadership development and leadership coaching. As part of PRIME, I'm very privileged to experience a lot of different experiences which are related to both the rankings and accreditations in a direct and indirect way and manner. And in my previous professional life, I've been involved very much in top rankings and also in securing accreditations for universities.
Thank you, Omid. Michele, last but definitely not least. Michele, if you could lean in a little bit more, I think we can't hear you very well.
The microphone is gone again. Oh, sorry. It's the first time I've ever been accused of being quiet in my life. George will know this very well. My name is Michele O'Dwyer. I'm Professor of Entrepreneurship at the University of Limerick in Ireland. And before I became an academic, I ran a marketing and market research agency working with entrepreneurs. I run our MBA program. I'm director of the MBA program at the university, and I've worked closely with AMBA for, I think, George, about the last 13 years or thereabouts, working with them on accreditation panels, developing MBAs, leaning into their expertise and looking at what they can help to provide in terms of making sure that we stay ahead of the curve and looking to future-proof MBA programs.
Thank you, Michele. And I think your microphone is still quite low. So as we move through here, I'm not sure if we can troubleshoot that a little bit. I know it's coming in and out, but thank you so much for your introductions. Excellent. So to kick off here, I would just like to jump right in to the conversation, and I kind of given a premise of what this is about, but please do build on each other's conversations. Please do build on your experiences and jump in kind of where that's relevant, and we'll again take some questions and comments from the audience as well. But maybe George, I'll start with you on this one. If you could speak a little bit to, just in a couple of minutes, why accreditation institutions in particular have added or really placed more emphasis on societal impact and sustainability in their criteria, especially over the last several years.
Thank you, Sophie. Well, it's simple. We have to reflect society. And to do that, our accreditation criteria have to be current and relevant. That's part of the story. So as we see changes in society, we also have to respond. But the other part of the story is, in terms of benchmarking, if the early adopters or the pioneers are doing something right among business schools, among universities, we want to make sure that these best practices are communicated to other parts of the community that may not be as advanced in that space. If I can use a phrase from entrepreneurship, sometimes the pioneers get the arrows, but the settlers get the land. In the context of early adopters, first mover advantage versus second mover advantage, in the business school world, the early movers in terms of sustainability, diversity, responsible management are also beneficiaries. And these are all the leading business schools around the world. Occasionally, we see smaller schools in not necessarily the global cities also becoming early movers, but it's our job to make sure that these examples are talked about. So, for example, in the AMBA criteria, we added a fourth chapter to the AMBA criteria in 2022, focused on societal impact, and it's a transversal principle that applies across the institution, across the programs, and takes care of asking the school what it is doing. So a lot of business schools around the world are doing great things, but they're not necessarily as good in communicating and in the publicity around them. And our job is to be also strategic about nudging the school to focus on key, whether it's SDGs or whether it is areas of impact that they're making, not spread themselves too thin, but we aim to help the schools identify where they can really have an impact and then communicate it better to the world. And part of the communication is also in the AMBA accreditation reports. We have a chapter with commendations, and when we commend the business school, often they will put it on their website, and we put it on our own website in a press release. Also, we have 13 annual prizes that we announce every January in London at the AMBA Gala dinner, AMBA and BGA. And so these, so at least 13 business schools around the world win the gold prize. There are also silver and bronze prizes. Schools that even get shortlisted, just for the mere shortlisting, will try to tell the world about that. So we meet in the middle. We try to be supportive, but also to help the schools strategically choose where their biggest strengths lie.
Thanks so much for sharing those initiatives and that kind of two-sided approach, pressure on both sides, both a little bit of the carrot and the stick as well. And appreciate you specifically mentioning to the communication part, because often that's really the hardest part, is getting the word out there about all the great things that the institutions are doing. We know our community is at the forefront of that. So maybe that's too where we come in a little bit later with the communication that Prime works on, our SIP report, or the sharing information on progress report. That's an opportunity really for these schools to communicate about their societal impact. Omid, Michele, did you have anything to add to that? Any reflections on why there's been this huge emphasis on societal impact? Maybe Michele, I'll start with you. I can't hear you, Michele. I don't know if it's just me.
Can everybody else hear me?
Now,
Okay, now, yep.
Apologies, I have no idea what's happening. Gremlins are my system today. It comes down to one simple thing for educational institutions, I think. We're very busy doing a lot of different things. Some of them are very productive, some of them not so. But what does happen is that what gets measured gets done. So if accreditation bodies are setting things that we have to pay attention to and report on, we focus more on it. Now, as George said, a lot of us are doing this anyway, but we didn't actually think it was of value. So when we look at societal impact now, we are forced to look at the relationship we have with society and not see ourselves as siloed or standalone, and that it's very much a symmetrical, symbiotic relationship, so that we feed into society as well as feed off it. So it's very important that we look at building relationships. Our impact could be much stronger than it has been to date. If you take a look previously at our roles as educational institutes, it was to produce graduates, if I can be so crude, to produce research without looking at the circularity of that. So drawing our attention to a circular economy, drawing our attention to all of the various facets of the relationship and how we can work better together is really important. And so when we have Prime giving us examples, when we have AMBA asking us questions, when we have AACSB, EQUIS, everybody else as well asking questions, we focus on responding, and we focus on anticipating how we might be able to better position ourselves and better deliver to our society.
Thank you, Michele. Really wonderful perspective there. Omid, I'll pass it to you for any additional reflections.
yeah, I can maybe share one or 2 points. One is, just came to my mind, there is this mantra which often was used, saying the business of business is business. And we know that is not true. Business is a social entity, a social reality. And so the purpose of business can't be just doing business. And the same is true for business schools, right? The output for business schools, the way we have been looking at it, is simply not enough. Business schools need to be stewards. They have to be able to lead into the future. That means automatically that there are tension fields with business. Because if you throw light into the future, you automatically create a creative tension, and you need to justify your points of the future. You need to explain yourself. You need to convince. And the most important part is you're looking in a long term into the future, not just what happens tomorrow, the next fiscal year. So this is something which requires leadership. It's not enough to manage a business school or to administer a business school. It takes real leadership. And that's the thing which is very hardly found in our organizations in general. The second point is that there is a global convergence, which I'm following. It's becoming stronger and stronger around the topic of ESG. ESG is not new, right? The terminology is new, but the emphasis is now, of course, a different one. But the new thing, the convergence, is to use ESG in combination with sustainability and impact. What does it mean to create impact by taking strategies which are from the outset built on sustainability principles? That's not an easy question, because one needs to first understand what impact really means, and we are still trying to find out about that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have that many conferences talking about it. That's, for me, always a sign that we are still in the learning. And therefore, I think this convergence on a global scale between sustainability, ESG, sustainability, so the social dimensions of sustainability specifically, and impact, that is something which is the new reputational currency of a business school. And that's the reason why we have this shift going on, given the challenges which we are confronted with as business schools.
Thank you, Omid. Great to hear the different perspectives too, and both the shift that we're seeing on both ends of the spectrum, right, in the business schools and in the accreditation, and that it's kind of a two-way, it's really a communication, right? So we're building off of each other, we're learning from each other. So speaking a little bit too, you started touching on a little bit of the challenges, Omid, too. And so I wonder, and maybe George, you can share kind of what you've heard from folks in workshops or constituents that are working with AMBA in the community. And then Michele, maybe yes, from the actual community perspective, from being in an institution, and then Omid from kind of both sides of it. What common challenges do you face, barriers, limitations, institutionally, really, when you're applying sustainability into your structures, into your curricula, into your operations? What are the main challenges that come to mind? Maybe Michele, I'll start with you and then we'll jump back around. No, we still can't hear you, Michele. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
There we go. There it is. There it is.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I have no idea why. Everything is on and everything should work. Story of life and technology. Yeah, there is a shopping list of challenges. It's literally a listing of challenges that we face. But I think the biggest one is cultural, and it's a mind shift. Because we're all happy paddling along every day, just keeping our everyday lives going. And people focus on work and focus on life in just one direction. And when somebody tries to steer us in a different direction, there is a bit of pushback. And one of the things that we've found very useful is being able to point to principles, being able to point to standards, being able to point to outside reasons that are pressuring all the various stakeholders within an educational institute to work together to follow sustainable goals. Because it's not enough that we have it in our programs and that we address it and our students have it. There is a multiplier effect, of course, when they go out into industry and they go out into their own communities with these principles firmly embedded in their psyche. But that can be eroded unless society itself has also moved. So when we don't just focus internally on our programs and our research to show that our research is not only sustainable, but focusing on sustainable issues, but it's actually our functional areas. So the finance departments and units within our organizations, the logistics units, the student registration, all of those separate back office functions, if they also are aligned towards considering sustainability and striving for their own sustainability goals, that helps to keep us all moving with less resistance, but moving in the same direction to embed sustainability so that it isn't greenwashing, so that it's not superficial, so that we are doing something that is more meaningful and feeding positively into not only our business environment, but of course our wider environment and society.
Yeah, thank you, Michele. absolutely a mindset change and mindset shift,
Mm.
all that we're doing. George, maybe back to you if you have any reflections again that you hear. What's the most kind of common challenge that folks come to you with?
So in in 2019, we created another accreditation system called BGA, Business Graduates Association, which is focused on sustainability and responsible management. And initially, some of the institutions we were visiting for accreditation, we'll have very interesting discussions on the definition of sustainability. And one thing was there was inconsistency between the, let's say, the institutional perception and the way faculty might view it, depending on how knowledgeable they were about this type of issues. But also, even at the institutional level, sometimes schools might have a very narrow view of sustainability as just a going concern to make sure that the institution can continue operating, to be sustainable. And of course, that's part of sustainability, but it's a very small part. So we've been educators in that dimension. One thing that helps, so Michele mentioned finance and logistics. They're great examples. Another one, perhaps you have thought of it as part of finance, accounting. In Britain, the king of the United Kingdom, Charles, when he was Prince of Wales, he had this charity called Accounting for Sustainability, which is still running under his auspices. And the sheer fact that sustainability and accounting were being put together helped make it more prominent in the minds of British institutions, perhaps more so than in other parts of the world, where the king or the prince or the prime minister wasn't talking about these things. And of course, King Charles is big in ecology and all kinds of all aspects of sustainability. But even these small things, communicating concepts to decision makers, it takes time for someone to hear a concept 10 times for it to sink in, or to make them Google it and develop an interest in an area. So we are on this curve of penetration, and in some parts of the world it's more advanced than in others, and that's understandable.
Absolutely. Having some role models and really breaking down these concepts to leadership. That's another excellent point. Omid, any reflections from you as well?
Concerning the barriers, right? Mostly.
Yeah, any barriers, challenges that institutions face in addressing this?
I think, if I would be choosy and just take one or two, I would say the one which I think is still the most persistent one is this false trade-off between excellence and relevance. I think, first of all, to define these terminologies again, what does excellence really mean in a world where institutions there is a trust erosion in institutions in society? Can excellence be just a matter of, when we talk about academic excellence in a university context, can we just talk about technical excellence, the pure sort of technique and the methodology and the expertise behind it? Or does excellence mean something much broader? Like in the Greek sense, if I think of the old Greek, arete, the word for excellence, meant both technical excellence, but also ethical excellence. So the more you grow competencies, the more you become knowledgeable, the more you're able to maneuver and influence your environment. With that comes also an obligation to become ethically mature. And I think this is a different way to look at it, right? Than to just say academic excellence is about basically the publication road, and relevance is then something we just add to it as a decoration. I mean, we already have progressed a lot, but I think understanding that there doesn't have to be a trade-off. We need to learn to integrate these things. The same thing as, for example, in order to create social impact in a curriculum, we also need to think more in a much more holistic way. So be less course attached, more purpose attached, and understand that expertise in our today's world means collaboration beyond subjects, beyond expertise, fields of expertise, beyond cultural boundaries. And that also requires to understand that the university is not just a platform, like a modern airport where people go and get their salaries and then they do their research outside in their different international networks. It's an organization which requires care by everyone. And it requires especially faculty people, members, to think like entrepreneurs or like intrapreneurs and say, how can I contribute to this bigger entity of the university so that it can fulfill its mission in a collaborative manner, understanding that otherwise impact is not going to materialize itself, and especially not sustainable impact. So these are things which I would say are the biggest barriers still, which we need to surpass, hopefully, together.
Yeah. Thank you, Omid. That collective is so important. And maybe while I'm on you, Omid, maybe you can speak a little bit more to how PRIME specifically fits in here. How does PRIME support academic institutions in meeting these accreditation or even ranking standards?
Right. I mean, PRIME is the big advantage that it is has a uniqueness to it because it is led by the United Nations. It's a United Nations initiative. And it's the largest sustainability initiative we have on this planet. And this in itself is nice to have, but of course we need to show day in, day out that we are worth this positioning and this distinction. And in one way, PRIME is doing this is to really have a framework which is inclusive, which was created again in collaboration with different institutions and based on their strengths, and then applying it to different parts of the world, to different constituencies, signatories in the PRIME network, which is almost 900 schools strong, and also offering again an inclusive platform where peer-to-peer learning can happen on a global scale. So, for example, if a school in Lancaster or in Mannheim or in Sunway or wherever it is in the world has developed new practice, which is promising and could be used maybe by other schools, that this can be seen by other universities on the planet. And not only that different universities are able to read into it the experiences which were made by the people involved, being able to really ask questions and create a dialogue where peer-to-peer learning can occur, and also making sure that one can tap into the experience itself, not just in a syllabus or in a more sort of superficial way of looking at that, just the success story, but also looking at how did that university get to that best practice? What were the stumble blocks? How was the process? What were the learnings? And thereby being able to adopt the things which may work in another context. And this episode, which I just tried to describe, happens in an ideal case. We are right now developing this platform from month to month further in such a way that it can become a global repository of learning and knowledge and experiences, which can then be tapped into by different universities. And this is something where we bring in this aspect of collaboration, this aspect of learning together, and also the topic, which is very important, which Michele brought up, the topic of developing a learning culture together, right? Where one cherishes each other's experiences and can be helpful towards each other. That's extremely important. breaking through the silos, basically. So this is one way where Prime is working to do that on an institutional level, but of course, in many ways also on the level of educators who are teaching courses who oftentimes are pretty lonely. I know it myself, how it is. And I've been, just to bring as an example, there's a course which I developed. It's called this Imagination Challenge back in 2009. And I was always contributing to also reportings of the university. But, you know, it was very difficult to find other colleagues also at other universities to really learn from each other and also get encouragement, which one needs to be able to, you know, get an extra impetus and extra energy to put into very effort some activities. And this is something which in the Prime network, once one is in it and one can see the level of engagement, purely the aspect of a large group of people being engaged and supporting each other just creates a total different energy. And I would almost say it has the character of a movement. And one can see that although one is only producing one experience oneself, one is only a drop in the ocean, one also hears about the waves of this bigger ocean, right? By connecting to the people around the globe, and the Prime Secretariat being able to provide insights and the global perspective on how things are actually moving and shaping around the world from year to year.
Thank you, Omid. Wonderful reflections too. And I think it's really important to emphasize in particular too that Prime really does feel like that kind of safe space too, where folks are really tracking against themselves, or they're really benchmarking against themselves rather than comparing to others, but really it's a place to learn from each other and kind of uplift our excellence all at the same time, really. So maybe I'll jump to George and see if you have any reflections too on how AMBA and Prime kind of work symbiotically too in this ecosystem. And then maybe I'll jump to Michele if you want to give kind of that on the ground look and maybe give us a little bit of a reality check. What is that actually like on the ground when you're preparing for accreditation or when you're engaging with Prime, and how you see those as complementary? So maybe George, I'll start with you.
If I can pick 4 concrete areas where I think we're pushing in the same direction. Omid talked about the false trade-off between excellence and relevance. On the relevance part, there is a very simple shortcut that I recommend to professors around the world. And it is using current or recent case studies, because in the last decade, pretty much all case studies, they touch on sustainability, they touch on responsible management. That would not have been the case in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And if we think about it from a time perspective, if a case study is from the last 3 years, that's already post-pandemic. If it's from the last 5 years, that includes the pandemic. So many things have changed in the last 5 years. And when we're talking about case studies, it doesn't only mean 25-page Harvard or Ivy or European case depository type case studies. Every piece of business or economic analysis can be a case study. It can be a 1-page article from The Economist or the Financial Times. And they are used particularly in executive education, just because executives are busy, their time is more constrained, including in the classroom. But why not use it in all levels of education for bachelor's and master's students? The 25-page case is almost a thing of the past. Conversely, the case studies from the 1960s, I call them zombie cases, because they're almost dead. And sometimes we have heated discussions with some faculty who are really keen on using this case study from the 1960s because it explains everything to the student. Yes, but it's not relevant to the student. And also it will not cover key perspectives like sustainability. Second example, a lot of faculty who take their students on company visits win the teaching excellence awards of their school or their institution, the university at large. And it's a simple thing to just take your students to the real world. There is a tag in our brain that tags location. And when you take your students to a new place, they remember it forever. So that's very impactful. Quite a few business schools do something related. They have these week-long study trips, whether it's abroad or in their home city. So in London Business School organizes this thing called London Business Experiences. Pace Business School, City University runs the London Symposium. That's part of the story, but it's not the full story. Professors should be taking their students to a company or a site visit at least once in this per semester, per course. And that's impact. Two smaller, but also very impactful, more faculty-focused aspects. Board participation. We encourage professors, lecturers to sit on company boards, charity boards, community boards, all kinds of, let's say, sports organizations, or there is school board, because that's relevance and connectedness to the world in both ways. They both learn about each other. The other people on the board learn about management education, what is happening at the business school when someone from the business school is represented on that board. And we ask schools to give us these statistics, particularly for the BJ accreditation, because there are some schools that are really supportive of their faculty doing this type of real world activities. And fourthly, consultancy. So some business schools have a policy of letting their faculty do consulting on Fridays, a day off, or 15% policy, 15% of their time being free for consultancy. And that, again, is a win-win, because the professors then can bring real cases, live cases into the classroom. So from all these perspectives, we are pushing in the same direction. The question is, how much can we push the laggards? And how can we help with benchmarking, telling the late adopters what the early adopters are doing out there?
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely something that they can gain inspiration from other members in the community too. Michele, I'd love to hear from you and your experience on the ground as well. We're gonna give it a second. I think the audience probably thinks this is a bit that we're doing, but I promise. There we go.
It's a mime. I'm doing miming. Yes, for some reason I'm in. George actually mentioned something very interesting just at the end of what you were saying, George. You mentioned direction. And that's really important, I think, from an educator's perspective, because I remember, when I started off as a student way back in the dark ages, it was difficult to get data. It was a challenge to find things, to get access to data and to get access to information. We're drowning in a sea of data, be it artificially generated, it doesn't matter. There's so much data that as an educator, you have so much choice to try and figure out what is going to help you to best achieve the learning outcomes for not only modules, but programs, can really be almost overwhelming. And so what we need to try to do as educators is take a look at our data, the basic raw information, translated into intelligence, and we use the direction given to us and the signals given to us by society at large, but also by accrediting agencies and agencies such as PRIME, who guide us and help us to remember that there are certain things that are so important, we shouldn't forget them. And that then takes us from intelligence to the knowledge that we share with our students and that they embed and internalize. And that's a really important part of the process. And to go back to something that Omid mentioned, it's collaborative. The entire process of trying to look at societal impact and help students and help educators and the institutions that support them be more aware of societal impact and how we can manage it, nurture it, and be more responsible for it so that it's not something we take for granted. It comes back again to something you mentioned yourself at the very beginning, Sophie, communication, but not just one way, that two-way symmetrical relationship again, so that we understand the choices that we're making, that they have an impact, and that this has a bigger ripple effect throughout society. So helping us to pare back the amount of data we deal with, to help focus on what's important, to weed out all the noise, to try and focus year on year. Because in the good old days, I remember being a student and one of our lecturers, who will definitely remain nameless, taught the exact same program from day one when they took over the module. And it was a running joke that people who graduated years before used to say, oh, and when it got to, did you do that? Of course we did. It was the exact same module. Now, even within modules and subjects when they're being taught, courses when they're being taught, we have to shift because the world is moving at such a quick pace. There are some things that are overwhelming and they just take everything that we had been going to do, wipe it off the board. So helping us with data and data management, artificial intelligence, research, helping us with that, giving us direction, helping us to focus, and providing a collaborative environment where we feed off each other's energy is really important. And it's almost as if the institution is in the middle of a Venn diagram. We have all of these support agencies that are so important to us. And the energy that each one of us gives and the direction that each one of us, gets from these external agencies is really important. Bring it back to shaping it to our core product, if we want to call it that, research, education, but also the institution, our institutions, and how they interact with the world at large, because that can often be forgotten.
Thank you. I think that's a really lovely note to end on here. And I want to pass it back to you all just for one kind of final word here, and maybe just any kind of advice or kind of maybe final reflections too on maybe the direction that we're headed here in this space too. And while we're doing that too, I'll just kind of reiterate to the audience, if you have any questions for the panel, we'll save the next 10 to 15 minutes to do that. So if you have any questions, please do use the chat function or the Q&A function. There's anonymity available there. But either way, we look forward to receiving any comments or questions that you may have. I'm happy to flag those to the panelists here. But maybe, Omid, I'll come back to you to kind of give some final reflections here on, kind of the direction that we're headed here and maybe kind of one last charge or call to action for the community here.
Yeah, actually, Sophie, the last word you just used, action, this is really it. A lot of the things which we are doing, are not sequential the way education was informed for many decades. Action is a way to, we hear this terminology, something being experiential, experimenting, exploring, but it requires action. And taking action goes beyond communication. Really, what does it mean to be as an educator, but also as a leader in an institution? What does it mean to be a steward for a learning process? It even goes that far that I would say, I know some people disagree with that. I often have interesting heated discussions. I say the teacher is actually the first student, him or herself. And takes basically this, to use the word which George was saying earlier, the pioneer in learning. in going to new territory, allowing the students to question assumptions, the frames within which we create knowledge and generate insights. So it really goes beyond the idea that we are producing knowledge, but more towards we are co-creating knowledge together. The teacher, to use another metaphor, as the nurse, who is allowing an awareness to give birth to an awareness among a cohort. How does one do that? It can't be directive. It has to be a dance, co-creational. It has to be something where we need to embrace ambiguity in doing so. It requires us not planning everything to the very end before we start teaching a course or running a program. It requires learning as we go. That's also part of action. So these are things which require us to rethink the way we do things and who we are in the role or in the various roles. It's easier if we talk with each other about it, because there's so many great things happening. When I was sort of more bound to my job, even if it has a global nature, I thought it had, but not to the extent what I'm doing right now on a global scale. You in a sudden see how rich, diverse, and tremendously wealthy we are in ideas and approaches. We have a lot of the things which we need to, solve issues, problems, not just for the learning aspect, but also for the sort of results aspect of it, the impact of it after the results. We just need to open the windows and the doors, putting up putting away the curtains, and enlighten ourselves with a new way of how education and learning can create human flourishing. This is a different way of talking about education. It's less programmatic, much more life-oriented. And so I'm looking forward to this process.
Great, thank you, Omid. And Michele, George, maybe just a couple of sentences, because I see some questions coming in.
Well, very quickly, I'm waiting for my microphone to wake up again. Oh, yay, excellent. Very quickly, I'd look at it as an adventure. It's like a road trip from an educator's perspective. So on the journey that we're on, we're not going to just one destination. It's a longer road trip, stopping off at various places that will shape our thinking. So as new inputs come to us, as new information comes to us, new intelligence, new knowledge, new needs, new understanding of our environment and the wider environment of the planet, as that comes to us, we need to be ready to roll with it. We need to be ready to experience the adventure of being on an unknown journey that, as Omid said, it's not completely planned out. But as George said, we have a direction.
Thank you so much, Michele. George.
One concrete thing about what Omid referred to as the co-creation of knowledge for us as educators. I find LinkedIn a great source of keeping current on what's going on out there. In business schools, posts, and people go to conferences and post a lot. But one way in which we can be more impactful in communicating and more strategic is when we go to a conference or to an event to say, hey, my key 3 takeaways are, or if there are not 3, my one key takeaway from this conference was, and this is the lesson in it. And it's one sentence that can help spread the word in a more impactful way. And then you can still say, oh, and so I met so-and-so and we had a great time, which is what most people will do on LinkedIn.
Thanks, George. So the questions I see coming in here too, so maybe I'll start with this that came in first. Are there specific initiatives that you can recommend for small B schools that can be useful in their accreditation and ranking journeys? So specific initiatives for small business schools that you can recommend. maybe I'll
Can
just
I?
take, yeah, please, George.
One concrete thing is to get into networks. And of course, smaller schools will get into smaller networks. Of course, all the accrediting bodies are networks, and they're a lot more collaborative networks, just because it's not whereas in a ranking, you're always one up or down and everybody's a competitor. In a network of accredited schools, AMBA has 300 accredited schools in the network. BGA has 150. ACSB has over 1,000. So none of them participating for one school does not deny another school the chance to participate. But beyond that, regional networks or industry or function-specific networks. So marketing schools, if you think your school is good at marketing, there are schools that focus on marketing. Get into those networks.
George. Michele, Omid, did you have specific initiatives in mind for smaller business schools? Oh, Michele. Let's give it a moment.
Okay, maybe I can start, and then in the meanwhile, Michele's channel warms up. I have what I mentioned that really comes to my mind because, maybe the background is, I used to run the SIM program at the University of St. Gallen for 21 years. It's a program which did world record 13 times #1 in the Financial Times ranking, and also in the Economist ranking, twice top. And there are many ways why, and at the same time being totally in line with the SDGs and in sync with, and focused on this idea of creating social impact and bringing it into the curriculum. So the way there are many principles behind it. I could talk for days about it, also because I have so much passion for it still. But such initiatives like this Imagination Challenge course were the reason why I could maintain the rankings, why the accreditations were always super, and I got best responses from ASCSB reaccreditations and EQUIS reaccreditations, and were also the reason why I could increase the student pool. And I'm going to put it into the chat, and then you can look at the website. And if you have questions, then you can contact me and I can respond to it, so that I don't talk for too long here.
Thanks so much. Let's give it one more try if you have any specific initiatives in mind. Not yet. No luck.
Or maybe you want to write it into the chat, Michele, maybe like I did. Maybe that's one way.
Yeah, let's give that a shot. And then the last question here, I know we're running low on time, but one question did come in, and George, I went ahead and posted it to you in the chat so you could reflect on it a little bit. But just so the audience can hear as well as Omid and Michele. But one audience member has asked a little bit about the challenges that AMBA might face in evaluating what they receive from business schools regarding social performance, and noting that these measuring these dimensions take a lot of quantitative and qualitative metrics or data to assess, and that increases quite a bit the cost, the time, and the complexity of evaluating and validating what we mean by social performance. So George, do you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Sophie. So there is a big distinction between the way rankings collect data and accreditation collects data. Rankings will ask for 10 or 20 metrics, and these have to be quantitative because that's the way one person then will collate it and will publish the ranking. The accreditation process is entirely different because we ask for quantitative data, but we also ask for qualitative data. So we're given typically a self-audit report of 100 pages and then another 500 pages in appendices. Then there will be also a base room full of documents that we review in the 2 days while we are at the business school on an accreditation visit. Documents that cover everything in the life of the business school. And we also spend these 2.5 days in conversation with all the key stakeholders. So it's a 4D process, 4-dimensional process, whereas the rankings is a 1-dimensional process. They only collect the quantitative data. So we tease out as an accreditation panel, which is composed of someone from AMBA and 3 other deans or associate deans or program directors from accredited schools on every panel. We tease out the essence of everything that goes on at the school for the last, and that has been going on for the last 3 or 5 years. And we even if there is conflicting information, we especially love conflicting information because it's an investigative. It's like a detective story. What's true? What's the reality? And of course, most of the time, it's not intentionally conflicting. It's just different documents and different people have a different interpretation of what's going on. But we find out in those 2.5 days, plus the preparation, plus the period before the visit when we review the documentation that's submitted 3 weeks in advance, and then in the post-visit stage where we produce an accreditation report on the institution, we cover everything in greater detail than a ranking can cover, just because we take a much more a richer view of the world.
Thank you. That's really helpful, and I think probably addresses that question in full. Michele, is there any way that you can give us one last word here? I don't want to leave without hearing from you.
Oh, yes.
It's coming in. It's coming in.
I've been playing with my settings, so I don't know what's going on. Okay. So what I would say with regard to the question on B schools, we're a small B school as well. And what we found really useful, genuinely, is going to the conferences, participating in the seminars, because there you meet like-minded people who are facing the same challenges. And there's a network there that forms naturally and organically around helping each other, sharing the things that we've done wrong, the things that we found work, the supports that we've had access to. And it's not a network that stops. And this is for any of the accreditation, any of the areas that we go to. It doesn't stop just when you leave the conference or the seminar. It continues on afterwards. So that's really, really important. And with regard to the AMBA visits, again, I've had the privilege of sitting on a few panels over the years. It's really immersive. And what I like about it is that it's not hostile and it's not judgmental. It's very much cooperative. So it's about, you get free consultants, people who are also passionate about MBA programs coming to you, not to try and impose their viewpoints on you, because we understand that everything is context specific and different resources are in play, different cultural factors. So it's to try to understand the bigger context for each business school, and then understand the challenges it faces, the strengths it has, the areas that it needs help with, to get free consultancy over that 2.5 days. Because certainly with AMBA, people often feel with perhaps some other accreditations that it can be very top heavy, that you must do certain things. With AMBA, it's about, yes, you have to achieve standards, but the interpretation of that can be fluid depending on the environment and the resources at play. So it's really interesting. It's always an interesting journey. I always come back from every one of those visits having learned something. Necessarily something that I could bring with me and have in my school, because it wouldn't fit, it wouldn't work. But certainly it's a learning experience, and it's very cooperative, collaborative again. But then again, for a lot of this, it's all about trying to find the information and the people who can help you. So that's about networking.
Thank you, Michele. Yeah, the importance of networking. And thank you for that tip on how to get really resourceful too in a community with what you have access to. Thank you all so much for your time today. We're at the hour here and I appreciate all your wonderful insights, George, Michele, Omid. Thank you for being with us today and providing inspiration for the community. Thank you so much for your time and thank you to all the audience that were with us. Have a wonderful rest of your day.